let's do A to Z book tag as a new booktube. If you haven't heard of this, definitely just search for A to Z book tag and enjoy some fun videos of all sorts from New Book Talk. The idea is I'm going to go through a list of questions which correspond to each letter of the alphabet. To put a bit of a spin on it, I decided to randomize the letters. So feel free to skip around if you prefer to hear a specific answer. You can find a website to the questions in my description below. I'm starting with O, which is one book you've read multiple times. So starting off strong with my guiltiest of guilty pleasures, which is the Black Jewels trilogy by Anne Bishop. This series is an absolute comfort read for me at this point. I have read it so many times. I wouldn't necessarily say I think it's the best series in terms of the writing quality, but I would say if you aren't scared of extreme tropes, like the tropiest of tropes, and the main characters being named things like Satan and Lucifer, but spelled different, you might want to give this series a shot. It is a dark fantasy. It has lots and lots of books in the series at this point. Again, I'm not sure that I would recommend it as a well-written series, but I read every single one of these that she publishes. So, I often will tell people I have no high ground to stand on when it comes to people reading quality writing, and this is the series that I will bring up and say, look, I love this series. I have reread this book so many times. I even got this special one that has all three of the first trilogy in one giant book. So, no judgment from me on any book that anyone is ever reading. The book that I chose for Glad You Gave This Book a Chance. Most recently, I would say Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, which I entered very skeptically because I just wasn't sure how it was going to go, and left thoroughly enjoying it. I found the writing clever and very funny. I really enjoyed the academia jokes as someone who myself got a PhD and still works with academics. So I really recommend this book for anyone who enjoys a low-stakes romance, which feels like listening to a hilarious gossip session at the next table over. Can't recommend it enough. So for H, that's the Hidden Gem book. I recently read Moth Me by Amber McBride, and I absolutely loved this book. Really loved it. I have not read a narrative poetry book, story, anything since I was reading epic poems for college. I actually didn't even know this was a genre. That is my ignorance, and I'm so glad that this was my introduction to it because it is just incredible. Truly loved it. Can't recommend it enough. Also, the cover is gorgeous. Really loved it. Don't want to talk about it too much because I feel like I couldn't talk about it with any great detail without spoilers, but it does start with a family being killed via a car crash, so just something to be aware of if you're going to enter that particular book. Drink of choice while reading. Very honestly, my favorite sip all day drink is plain old water. I know that makes me very boring and lame, but I like plain water with ice. I don't even add flavor. I don't add anything to it other than ice. I'll drink water from the tap. I have a refrigerator that dispenses water, so I will drink water from the dispenser, but I prefer just plain old ice water. Water in water. Water squared. That's my favorite drink to sip. So currently reading, I actually just finished, so I was currently reading Housekeeping by Marilyn Robinson. And this was actually recommended from the comments of a video that I will have in my description. This book is an experience, and it is actually something that I am thinking of doing a quick review on at some point in the future. So I will talk about that more if I decide to do that, but for now, Housekeeping. Series you started, but need to finish is S. So for me, this is going to be the Unbroken, the Faithless, and then there's one more which I believe is I don't remember the name of the last one. It's not the dictator, because it's her. One thing I will say, the covers for all of the books are absolutely incredible looking. I unfortunately can't find my copy of The Unbroken. I think I actually lent it to somebody, probably my oldest niece, who is the one who bought it for me for Christmas a couple of years ago. So The Unbroken is the first in this series by C.L. Clarke. The Faithless is the second. As you can see, I obviously do have this one in hand. And then the third one, the Regent, I feel terrible. I will have to look it up. I will put it on screen in a moment so that you can see what it is. But these are romantasy, sapphic books that are set in fantasy France and Morocco, I believe. And so there is colonialism, there is a lot of white guilt, and there are just incredible covers. I truly can't get over how awesome the covers are. Like, this is probably one of my favorite covers because she just looks so badass. She looks so badass in that picture. Love it. Also, I should say, this main character is obviously Caucasian, presumably French, or the version of France that exists in this world, but she is actually disabled. She has a cane that she uses, and the other main character is Terrain, and she is a woman of color, which is very cool. And the sapphic romance is between the two of them. It is very much so an enemies to lovers-ish, not ish, it is an enemies to lovers, and lots of sexual tension. Some politics, but the politics is not as heavy as some might like. So if you're more into the romantasy side rather than the political side of your average romantasy, definitely can recommend that series. You is Unapologetic Fangirl 4. And honestly, I apologize for nothing. And you shouldn't either. Be a loud and proud fangirl. Like, in the spirit of the question, I'll give an answer, but be unapologetic. Be the fangirl that you are in your heart. I will say that I am unapologetic about reading and writing fanfic. I will admit to it in a public forum. I enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a huge field at this point. There's giant websites dedicated to fanfiction, and a lot of authors, not just recently, but in the past, got their start via fanfiction. It's a really great way to try your hand at something, to even try your hand at different styles of writing, because if you're writing fanfic for different kinds of authors, different kinds of settings, you can try to mimic their style, and that's a good way to practice and kind of get your hand in different styles of writing. So, no shame in it. Own it, be loud and proud with it, and who knows, these days, maybe you can turn your epic fanfic about whatever into a really popular book series. Preferred place to read is tea, and for me, definitely in bed before I go to sleep. It's just a habit more than anything. I've always idealized a little book nook with a comfy chair, and honestly, I have this giant sunroom now in my house that I could create that dream book nook with a little chair and everything, and I just prefer hanging out in my bed at the end of the day. X marks the spot for the 27th book on your shelf. So I'm just going to say this is the next book that I am reading because I don't really have a large bookshelf. I generally read ebooks these days. So I'm just going to say the book that I am currently reading, which is The Queen in Winter. And it's actually by 4 different authors. They all wrote a quadrant, I guess, of this book. And so I have read 2 of them over the past couple of days. I have dogs. I have read 2 of them over the past couple of days, and I'll probably finish it in the next couple of days, and it's fine. It's cute so far. That's all I can say so far. Maybe not the best reaction or recommendation, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. It's fine. It's fine. It's an easy read. Definitely not poorly written at all. So, and again, another really nice looking cover. I love the cover. So, very nice. So F is fictional character you would have dated in high school, and on my case, let's be so for real, Fox Mulder. I was a huge X-Files fan, absolutely obsessed with the X-Files. I read the books. There were comics at the time as well. I love that character. I love the idea of the character. I I thought David Duchovny was very attractive. Still is to me. Yeah, Fox Mulder. That's the one. That's the one I would have dated. The poor spooky Mulder. That's what I'm thinking. M is major book hangover because of. So, my understanding of this prompt is a book that you kind of regret reading. And for me, it's a book called She's Come Undone. I'll put the cover on the screen because I don't remember who it's by. My mom read it way back in the day. I was a teenager in high school. It was an Oprah's Book Club recommendation. And then she gave it to me to read. And she didn't give me any additional context. She just said, read this book. Literally gave it to me and said, read this book. And after I finished it and we talked about it, I discovered that she had hated it and I hated it. And I still have memories of how much I hated that book. And it's been almost 20 years since I read it. So I'm thinking I might do a review on it, but based off of my memories on it, and then maybe reread it and do a secondary, follow-up review on my updated feelings on it. But I don't want to reread it. But She's Come Undone. I do not remember who it's by. It'll be on the screen. Hated it. Hated. Quote that inspires you is cute. I don't really collect inspiring quotes, but I like to highlight passages. Here's one that I really liked from a book that I read last year called He Who Drowned the World, which is part 2 of a 2-part series that starts with She Who Became the Sun. Again, I cannot remember the author's name right now, but it will be on the screen. Loved these books. Would highly recommend checking them out if you're potentially interested in a fantastical retelling of the establishment of the Ming Dynasty in China. I really love these 2 books. But the quote that I really loved in He Who Drowned the World was, only men could spend years agonizing over the morality of a decision. They know the opportunity would still be there when they're ready. They knew their potential would never fade, even if potential was all they'd ever had, and never the realization of it. But women didn't have that luxury. I just thought that was a really nice quote. W, worst habit. By far, my worst reading habit is procrastination. I love reading. I always feel better when I read, but I also procrastinate starting a book. I'm really bad about that. I've set goals the past few years to read every day if possible, and I use a really simple habit tracker app that sends me a notification every single day at 9 p.m. to read for 15 minutes. There's also a really nice cue to start getting ready for bed. Works about 70% of the time. So I have gotten a lot better about reading every day. It's something I want to do. I know that you don't have to read every day, but I want to because I am really bad about getting started on reading if I lose that momentum. So trying to stay on that for 2026. My goal this year is 40 books for the year, which is a lot for me. Z is Snatcher, or Z's Snatcher, basically the last book. So V is B's Snatcher, or Z's Snatcher, the last book that kept you up way too late. And for me, that was actually the last book I read of 2025, which I read on the last day of 2025, or finished, I should say, on the last day of 2025. And that was Roadside Picnic, which is by a pair of Russian brothers. I will put the cover on the screen because I do not remember their names. I want to say Stanislova was their last name, but I could be completely remembering that. But finished it right before midnight. Very, very proud of myself, and I absolutely loved that book. Cannot recommend it enough if you enjoy sci-fi and want a very different take on sci-fi. The idea of aliens visiting Earth, like a different take on that specific concept, I would recommend it. It's actually a really interesting concept, and the ending haunted me. It stuck with me for several days. I actually wrote the last page out in my reading journal because I I needed it out of my head. It's very, very good, pretty intense, and it's very ambiguous, which I'm kind of a fan of. So, Roadside Picnic. Number of bookcases you own. Right now, I only own one, and it's not that populated. Most of my books that I have are books that I have physical copies of because they're among my favorites. So, these are books from when I was a kid that I still really love, and books that I may have gotten more recently that I really love and or have not given as lent out to friends or family to read. So why is your latest book purchase? I just purchased The Horror the other day based on recommendations from horror fans. I've heard it's really good, so here's hoping. I have not started it yet. It's probably going to be my next book after I finish The Queen in Winter. Part of my goal this year, however, is to get through my to-be-reads, and a lot of those are actually physical books that I still have in my shelf that I haven't looked at for years. The Queen in Winter is actually one of those, so I'm very happy that I'm able to start getting through this one. And so The Horror may have to wait until after I finish the to-be-read pile. I is for important moment in your reading life. The best story I have related to my reading life is that my mom banned me from the library as a kid because I read too many books. I was not allowed to go to the library for months. I was so mad. But it's also a really fun story to be able to tell as an adult. So, dog. This is one of the boys you've been hearing. This is Cooper. You want to say hello? Meow. Reading regret. Probably Utopia, which is because Ever After was a favorite movie as a kid. Loved Ever After. I still love Ever After. I absolutely adore the movie Ever After. And the main character of Ever After, played by Drew Barrymore, really loves this book and spouts some pretty neat philosophy from it. So I was a bit taken aback when I read it, and learned that Utopia has slaves, and argues that slaves are simply necessary. You have to have slaves, because otherwise why would people do, sanitation positions? Why would people do things like clean latrines willingly? You have to have slaves. In a similar story, I did not read H.P. Lovecraft growing up. I am a huge horror fan, but I never read Lovecraft. It was Rats in the Walls. It had been recommended as a good entry point for Lovecraft. And I did read the whole story, but that really, just be aware. Now I know, Lovecraft is notoriously racist. Fair warning to anyone who has not read Lovecraft before. He was incredibly racist. It's not even a little tiny bit subtle in his work, and I really wish that I had known that before going in, because I could have made a better decision about what I was going to read, how I was going to approach it. If you are a horror fan and a person of color, the influence that Lovecraft has had is all-encompassing. There's a lot of incredible media that has been based on and or inspired by Lovecraft's work. And you have to reckon with that. I wish I'd had a chance to do that before I read my first book by him. For e-reader or physical books, e-readers are absolutely my preference. They're more comfortable to hold for me. They're much easier to read. I can adjust the font. I actually use the Open Dyslexic font, which is just so much easier on my eyes. You can adjust the backlight. You can adjust the warmth. And I can carry so many more books everywhere I go. I do travel a lot for work, and so having a lot of books at my disposal is really awesome. Very excited for this release. I hate to disappoint you, but I don't really keep up with book releases enough to be excited for them. I will say that every time I see that Anne Bishop, my Black Jewels trilogy queen, is gonna publish another book in the Black Jewels series, I will pre-order it. I can't get enough. No matter how badly they are written, no matter how silly the story has gotten, and it has gotten very silly indeed. I can't stop. I have to keep going. 3 of your all-time faves. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Watership Down, Ender's Game, and The House of the Spirit. I would recommend all 3 of them for very, very different reasons. First of all, Watership Down. So this is actually a really fun and kind of standard millennial introduction to Watership Down story. My best friend and I, when I was in middle school, went to the Blockbuster and picked out 2 movies. I do not remember what the other movie was, but Watership Down, the movie, has an adorable bunny on the cover. And it's animated. And it was rated G, or in the UK, U, for everyone. So, we picked it, and we watched it. And if you haven't seen Watership Down, it is indeed a story about adorable bunnies, and some pretty intense anti-fascist messaging is in there, as well as environmentalism, war, territorialism. It's a pretty intense animated movie. I had to know more. So I went to the library and found out, because it says based on the book by Richard Adams in the movie. So I found, this is not that copy, but I found a copy of Watership Down and read it and proceeded to start a lifelong love with this book. This is legitimately, to this day, my number 1. I love this book so much. Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. So if you know anything about Orson Scott Card, don't buy his book if you are an ally of LGBTQI+ individuals. He's not. So I got this from a secondhand bookstore. The first book that I had, which was when I was a kid, before the infamous interview came out where Orson Scott Card did say the terrible things that he said about gay marriage in particular and gay people in general, was purchased. We didn't know. But this was purchased secondhand. And I love this book. I hate to say it to a degree, but I find this an incredibly compelling narrative. I did not see what was coming at the end coming at all. Did not predict it, did not see it coming in any way, shape, or form. And for me, that's actually kind of rare because I tend to go through a lot of different scenarios in my head and I end up predicting what's going to happen, not necessarily because I'm that smart, but because I go through all the scenarios in my head. And so when the inevitable ending comes, it's something that I've already envisioned. And so this was a really pleasant surprise for me where I legitimately didn't see it coming. I had no clue what was going to happen. I found the character of Ender incredibly sympathetic. I found the people surrounding him sympathetic. I loved it. So if you can find it in a library or a secondhand bookstore, give it a shot. I would say go to the library. Support your local library, please. They need it. The last one, House of the Spirit. I don't even know how to narrow down what is awesome about this book. Everything. Everything is awesome about this book. It is a magical realism setting, more spiritismo, if you are familiar with the spiritismo from the Caribbean or Latin American countries. Spirits exist. They are real. They have presence in the world. That is part of this book. You are following a gentleman and the women of his family over several generations, and it's just really good. It is set in Chile right before the Chilean Revolution, and I can't recommend it enough. It is beautiful. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. There was a movie adaptation. Would not recommend it, but this book, so good. Best sequel ever. This is hard for me because I honestly don't remember series very well. After I finish the series, the books tend to all blend together. So I'm gonna say Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, the second in the Hunger Games trilogy. because it's one I can easily remember, honestly. And also, it's a happy memory for me personally, because my dad read the Hunger Games books and then gave his copies to me to read, and it was a really fun shared experience that I had with him. And while I loved the trilogy anyway, it has a special place in my heart because of that connection. I just finished Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay the other day, and I liked half of it a lot, and absolutely hated the other half of it. And unfortunately, it wasn't like first half v second half. It was divided within the book, the different sections. And so I really liked half of it, and then the other half of it, it was well written though. It's not poorly written to me, but I have seen other people say that they found the writing a little bit of a struggle as well. Unfortunately for me, it's a horror book. I am a horror fan. I didn't find it scary at all personally, which is why it had been recommended that it's, an actually scary book. Okay, kinds of books you won't read. I give anything a chance, but I tend to avoid the extreme horror genre that gets into like taboo or gross stuff being described. It's just not something that I'm particularly interested in reading. I ingest enough gross imagery in real life. Now, again, I'll still give it a shot, but as soon as I get to stuff that I'm just like, ooh, that's really gross, I'll probably just put it down. There's lots of other people who that is for, and that's awesome. And so all the power to those authors and the readers who enjoy them. L. This is for the longest book you've read. I think so far in my life, it's It by Stephen King. I'm pretty sure that's the longest book I've ever read. I actually just read it last year. I decided to tackle it because there's so much media out right now that's either directly adapting it or inspired by it. The book name, not the word. I'm really glad that I read it, but similar to the Lovecraft warning from before, approach the 50 sections in particular, knowing that you are going to be reading some pretty harsh racism from all directions. I had heard it was in there, and so I was mentally prepared, but it's a pretty rough read. There's also pretty extreme animal cruelty, pretty extreme child abuse, child mutilation and death, all of the warnings for that book. And there's a rather infamous scene that happens in the book as well. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I honestly can't really say, but I will link Dominic Noble's Boston adaptation about it, and he does talk about it, and it's pretty infamous. So the last letter by my randomizer, I thought this was so funny, was A. And this is for the author I've read the most books from. Now, I originally thought this has got to be Anne Bishop, because I have read so many Anne Bishop books because she has quite a few Black Jewel books. Like, there may be up to 15 at this point, which is a lot to me. However, when I thought about it, I realized it's R.L. Stine. It's R.L. Stine! There's no way that I've ever read more books for a single author than I read for R.L. Stine. It's gotta be easily over 100. I mean, there's just no way. I love all of them. I even have, to this day, a special edition of the Fear Street Saga, which has a plastic cover for some reason. Plastic cover! And obviously it's old, like it's been torn up. I don't actually know how it got torn up. Maybe a dog got to it in the past, but it also has a genealogy of the Fear family. So good. And I absolutely would reference it while I was reading the Fear Street. I believe it's a trilogy. I loved R.L. Stine. I loved horror books as a kid, and I loved kid horror books. Whether or not he actually wrote all the books that his name is on doesn't matter to me. I loved them. I read Goosebumps, I read Fear Street, I read everything. It's gotta be R.L. Stine. Which, I hope there's people out there who can relate, and who also remember when, if you were having a yard sale, and you had R.L. Stine books particularly Goosebumps books, you could put that on the sign and parents would come from miles away and come with a list and say, do you have number 42? Do you have number 33? Like, their kids would be asking for specific numbers in the Goosebumps series. I kept the one that I loved the most, which was the Fear Street trilogy, the saga, as it is called, the Fear Street saga. I would be curious to know how many of his books I actually read, because it's gotta be, it could be over 200, easily. Like, there's just no way that any other author I have ever consumed in my life compares. Thank you so much for joining me on this introductory journey. Tell me the answers to these questions for you. Any of the questions that you thought were fun, anything that you think would be really cool, and did I have any surprises or jump scares on my list that you didn't see coming? Happy reading and productive writing!